It's the moment you didn't know you're waiting for.
He is Carter.
He's Chad.
And this is the Irish 365 podcast.
Chad, this is Lou Holtz. That's head coach of Notre Dame for 11 years. Greatest experience of my life. They're starting a Notre Dame podcast this summer. I have a podcast as well, but it's not about Notre Dame football, although I wish there were. But congratulations on your success. And it would be nice if I could be on your podcast, but my schedule is so hectic. But anything that has to do with Notre Dame, I'm all for it. God bless you. Go Irish.
Welcome into the Irish 365 podcast. After a little bit of a break, we're ready to get back into this, right?
Yeah, it's spring football season just around the corner, so let's get ready for spring football.
I mean, is there anything to talk about Notre Dame football in the offseason, Jordan?
I don't know. There's not much going on, but I feel like there's a few things we could definitely talk about.
I feel like that we may be able to come up with some content today. So, I mean, I think one of the biggest questions going into this 2025, crazy to say, 2026, 2025, 2026 season, who's going to be leading the Irish offense, right? But before we get into that.
Yeah, QB1 is the big question, but we got to talking about prepping for the QB1 talk.
Yeah.
And we said, you know what would be fun? And actually shout out to Caden, because Caden suggested this idea.
Yep.
We should talk about our all-time favorite QBs at Notre Dame. The only restriction is we had to see him play.
Yep.
So I can't go pulling out Joe Montana because I don't remember seeing Joe Montana play.
Yep.
So it was kind of a fun exercise, especially since we're like three different generations or different time periods where the overlap may occur. My list is a little better. I got to be honest. I as far as the selection,
Okay.
I have.
You have the most selection.
I have a guy on my list that actually was in the NFL for a sustained period. I don't know if you guys can have that on.
What do you
your list.
consider sustained period? And you didn't say a starting quarterback in the NFL, so I've got maybe a two-time Super Bowl champion on my.
You know what? I might too. So, all right. Well, Carter, since you've got the,
I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest, and you've got the shortest window of Notre Dame quarterbacks to pick from. Let's hear your ranking. Who do you got? Who's your top four all time?
So coming in at number 4, Deshaun Kaiser. I know there's probably a little bit of debate on this, but we can just simply go off one play that I'll always remember when I was in middle school. Beating Virginia on that.
Yeah.
Hail Mary.
Coming in cold, into the game, throws a freaking dime.
Yeah.
And the Virginia
the fan with their hands.
See that, yeah.
The surrender cobra, the kid hanging over the wall. Like, yeah, it was good start. Solid start to
that's
perform.
my number 4. Just like you can literally just be off that play. And he did go to the NFL. He went to the Browns. So I mean,
he was in Green Bay for a short period too.
Yeah, he was around. He did make the NFL, but yeah, I mean, just off that one play alone, I think Deshaun Kaiser gets into my top 4. That shows you how great my quarterback play's been. I'm not going to go this guy for his whole career. I'm just going 2012 Everett Golson. I don't want his whole career. Yeah. I just want 2012. Is that allowed?
Yeah.
I don't have to pick up his whole career. Okay. Because the other stuff was But 2012.
Well, 2013 didn't exist. So
yeah, that was the prodigal son year. He was banished for period. So.
Yes.
So I mean that was a good run. That 2012 run, obviously the national championship. Everett Golson, there you go. And then, I mean, you got to go number 2, the all-time winningest quarterback in Notre Dame history, right? I mean, Ian Book.
Yeah, a solid choice.
I mean, I did live to see the all-time winningest quarterback in Notre Dame history, Ian Book. Guy just likes to win games. That's all I like to say about him. I mean, he might not be the prettiest, but he's gonna go out and win some football games.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes was when Ian Book was like committed to Notre Dame, and there was a lot of people just like trashing him. And I remember one of the recruiting guys was talking to his dad, and the quote was, "Listen, you don't know Ian Book. Ian Book's not going there to hold the freaking clipboard. Ian Book's going there to win the starting job."
Yep.
And think about what the kid went through, and you know, like no one expected that kid to be a starter, and then find a way to be as winning as quarterback at Notre Dame history. It's pretty impressive. So, yeah, I like Ian.
Yep, Ian Book, number 2. And then, of course, number 1, the golden child, Brady Quinn.
Oh, Jimmy Clausen didn't make your list.
Jimmy Clausen didn't make the list.
Right.
I mean, that punch at CJ's Pub really just, I think, threw him off the list.
Yeah, when he got the punch.
Yeah.
More driving,
Brady Quinn, I mean,
alcohol.
Even still helping out with the NIL today, just pushed him all over the top, number 1 over Ian Book there.
And you got to like Brady Quinn. Just Mr. Notre Dame. I mean, maybe Jack Kaiser's Mr. Notre Dame now, but
Yeah.
but Brady Quinn, solid choice. So, all right,
Yeah.
cool. So, Jordan, what'd you pull out? What's your list? Who you got?
All right. So my list, I got a couple years. I'm pretty much in between you guys. So
Yeah.
I got a little before Carter, but not. I can't go back as far. And also, when I thought about the list, I was like, I tried to go off feeling. Like, how did I feel watching these guys play? So that was a big factor. Number 4 for me is Jarius Jackson. So
yes.
if you, Carter, I don't know if you remember the WWJD bracelets, but
I do
they
not.
they coincide perfectly when Mr. Jarius was quarterback. He was kind of in my opinion, our first dual threat quarterback. He could throw. The 1999 season, he threw for 2,800 yards and rushed for 500. So typically Notre Dame, I thought, had always been more of a drop back quarterback. Our Ron Paulus, our Rick Meir, all those guys. And we brought this guy in, stocky, could run and throw. Season wasn't great, but still, the guy was he could go out there and make plays.
Yeah, and so Jarius Jackson was before Carter's birth. I hate to tell you that. But there was bracelets that were WWJD, what would Jesus do? That was like the bracelet, kids would wear, like, inspirational. And Jarius Jackson popped on the scene, and then it became what would Jarius do? That was Jarius Jackson. I actually know a guy who named his son Jarius because he was inspired by Jarius Jackson. So
wow,
that's how good Jarius was for his moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid number 4. I like it.
Yeah. Number 3, just a year later, freshman quarterback, 2000, Matt LaVecchio. So you may think, why Matt LaVecchio? He came in cold. After Notre Dame we lost to Nebraska, I believe. Arnaz Battle went down. We ran Gary Gotze for two games. Come out, Matt LaVecchio, true freshman, out of Bergen Catholic, which tie in for later, out of New Jersey. Comes in cold, true freshman, 7-0, leads us to the Fiesta Bowl. We get stomped by Oregon State, but that's beside the point. Matt LaVecchio, not great stats, kind of reminded me a little bit of Riley. Just went out, was a winner. So he made the list. He was very impactful for me. I was a sophomore in high school at the time, so I was all in on Matt LaVecchio.
Yeah, LaVecchio was a solid choice. A little obscure, but solid choice.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Carter, you can't go after that. He kind of busted. He transferred to IU, but that 2000 season, I was all in.
Well, he ended up getting displaced by Carlisle Holiday, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was another dual threat style quarterback.
Yeah. Which he almost made my list, but number 2 is same as Carter, the 2012 Everett Golson. That team was just fun to watch. He could run, make plays. Didn't realize how, I kind of take it against him that he transferred to Florida State, afterwards. That's a big strike. But my brother, that's maybe one thing that we share in common. We both could like Everett Golson. So.
I could root for Everett Golson at Florida State.
Yeah. Yes. That's the one jersey we're both allowed to have. And then number 1 for me, Brady Quinn. I was in college at the same time. I went to a few Notre Dame games, and I think the biggest thing for Brady was you got to see him struggle through Ty Willingham. Just, the talent was there. We run Ty out, and we bring in Charlie Weiss and just open up the offense. And you got Jeff Samardzija. You had Kamara. You had so many guys that we were just throwing all over the place, and it was fun to watch. So.
Samardzija was the greatest baseball pitcher to ever play receiver at Notre Dame, hands down.
Yes, no one can take that away from him.
So I think that's interesting, and Brady Quinn. How can you not like Brady Quinn, right? So wow, you got Brady Quinn as your number 1 as well.
Yeah, so the 2006.
We got 2 Brady Quinns at the top of the list. I have Brady Quinn on my list as well. So I come in number 4 with Ian Book, which I think, again, Carter is a very confrontational pick. And I can go back to like Steve Berline and Joe Montana. Technically, I was born when those guys played. I don't remember Montana at all. I just don't. I know the legend of Joe Montana. I remember Joe Montana in the NFL. I do not remember Joe Montana at Notre Dame. Berline. I kind of remember being at Notre Dame, but not like my fandom wasn't. I wasn't watching games on a regular. So yeah, so I don't get those guys in. But so when I come in number 4, I come in number 4 hot with Ian Book. And just because, not because he's the most talented player we've ever had or the best quarterback necessarily we've ever had, but the guy just found ways to win. Like you just and I there was a game, and I'm trying to think which game it was off the top of my head, where he was going into the end zone and he fumbles the ball, and like you think, oh, we've lost this game. Clemson
2020.
Yeah, and then he comes back and like mental stamina is just to put all that behind you and lead the next drive and score. Like, so yeah, big shout out to Ian Book. Number 3, I'm coming in hot with Brady Quinn. Gotta have Brady Quinn on my list. Absolutely gotta have Brady Quinn on my list. Just you can't not like Brady Quinn. And I probably one of the bigger things for Brady Quinn is, one, he was just such a great player. I think what you spoke about, Jordan, coming in, seeing him struggle under the Willingham offense and then explode under the Charlie Weiss offense and really become. But just that's when Carter was really starting to get into football, and so like that was just it's just got a special place, that bond, that father-son bond with the Brady Quinn love. And I think we got a little bit of that with Caden and like Ian Book a little bit. Like Caden kind of started paying attention, during the Ian Book era. So for me, those two guys probably got anchored for that reason whatsoever. But then the next guy on my list is Rick Meyer. I like, he came in after my number 1 guy won us a national championship. And he played the next 3 years. We played at a high level, went on to the NFL, like just enjoyed like and this is my post-college time or college time. Like Rick Meyer was like he was our guy. So really he made number 2 on my list. And then number 1, it's got to be Tony Rice, the original Notre Dame dual threat quarterback. I mean, he was, I think he was the first. There was one quarterback between him and Steve Berline. No, I think it was Berline. Yeah. I'm trying to think who it was. There was one guy ahead of him, or between him and Berline, who was before him. Of course, Berline went to the NFL, and you go back a couple more, and then you get into like Joe Montana. But Berline had a good NFL career. But yeah, so Tony Rice. Tony Rice Tony Rice was Riley Leonard before Riley Leonard. Tony Rice was so bad at throwing the ball. It's a legendary story that Lou Holtz bought him a dartboard and told him to go down to the linebacker and play darts. Just learn to aim the ball, son. Just please. But he was a heck of an athlete. He's probably the guy that got Lou Holtz in trouble. His academics weren't great coming in high school. Lou Holtz committed to him and said, come to Notre Dame, come to Notre Dame, come to Notre Dame. The admin did not like that Lou Holtz brought this kid in, and Lou Holtz made this argument. Like, I've already promised this kid he's his job. We're Notre Dame. We can't back out on him. Lou Holtz went against the grain, broke the rules, got Tony Rice in. Tony Rice led us to a national championship. He's legendary. He did graduate from Notre Dame, so he got past the academic struggles. So yeah, he became number 1 on my list. And then when I talk about that, to you, Jordan, Jarius Jackson was that first dual threat. It was Jerry. I don't even know. He was Riley Leonard. He wasn't even a dual threat. He was just, he could run the triple option and you couldn't stop him. And he threw it just enough to keep you honest. I mean, that was Jerry Rice. Or Tony Rice. So yeah, so he had to be my number 1 guy there. So yeah, kind of an interesting list. We got some overlap though. I mean, Golson was a tough choice. I like Golson a lot. I wanted Golson to be so phenomenal because he showed that potential, and it just never quite get there. So one of the fun facts I have is a guy I work with. His son went to Notre Dame and was roommates with Everett Golson. And so he, and his son's like a neurosurgeon or something now, but he was Everett Golson's roommate, and he's like, Everett Golson's been to our house, nicest kid you've ever met. He said, and he is phenomenal playing the piano. He says he walks in the house, we got this piano, and Everett Golson sits down and says, "Oh, can I play?" And they're like, "Sure, go ahead." And they're like, "No, this kid just didn't play. This kid played." Like they were blown away. And I also remember Everett Golson was trying to play basketball at Notre Dame as well. And he was basically told, you get your grades in order, and you master football, and you could go play the second half of the basketball season for Bray. Of course, Mike Bray was chomping at the Brits because Golson was a North Carolina kid, and I think he even had an offer from North Carolina for basketball.
So.
Like he was legitimate D1 talent basketball wise, and Bray's like, yeah, bring the kid over. We'll let him play. Half a season's better than no season. So yeah, Everett Golson's a kid that's easy to like. Unfortunately, didn't have the career we'd liked him to had, but he did some good things. So
definitely,
yeah.
So
yeah. I agree.
Yeah, so fun to think about. And I'm sure other people listening are probably thinking about their list as well. And so yeah, drop your list in the comment section. We'd like to hear them.
And I think a lot of people also are thinking in this one, there's probably some guy that's going to be starting quarterback this year that might be making this list, right? I'm sure.
I think there could be.
Yeah.
We'll go into this, and I think Carter had a good idea on how we discussed this. We each were assigned or picked a quarterback of QB1, 2, and 3s. Because we don't know who QB1's going to be.
Yeah.
So Jordan, you got Angeli. Carter, you got Kenny Minchie, and I got CJ Carr in the draw. And we're gonna follow the procession of what they do for Pro Football Hall of Fame. Yep. We each took a person. We're going to make the case on why they should be QB1.
Yep.
And I think it'll be an interesting exercise to say the least. What I think even more interesting is thinking about it. These are three guys that for different reasons, I could rally behind any one of these three guys as QB1.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting part about this. I mean, there's not a clear favorite. I think each guy has its own unique case. And I think we've all decided we're going to try to keep this positive. We're not going to tear any of these guys because I think generally all three of us could see any three of these guys being a day one starter beginning of the season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and so, Jordan, we'll let you make the case why they should start Steve Angeli. I mean, Steve Angeli has already started one game, and he is 1-0 as a starter.
Exactly.
So take it off. Let us hear it.
All right. As I was digging into Angeli, I kind of had to come up with 3 bullet points on why Steve should be the starting quarterback. Loyalty, that's number 1. Growth, and he's experienced. So first off, he comes recruited. He's a 3-star, 4-star, around that in the 2022 season as a freshman. And he got into 2 games, but they were just basically handoffs. And if you think about that 2022 team, that was Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner, which, he, looking at those 2 guys, that season, I think he could have got some playing time. Those guys didn't really light up, at quarterback. But he ends up redshirting that. So right now he's a redshirt junior. So go into his 2023 season, sophomore season, he might think he's got a shot, but we bring in the dreamboat Sam Hartman. So he does come in, though. He appears in 8 games, and you kind of see that he can throw. He's got a decent arm. And he has a few games where he throws, he's 6 for 6 in a game, different passes that he can throw long and short. But I think what ends up happening is Hartman ends up opting out of, going to the draft. So what do we get? We get Angeli in the Sun Bowl. And the Sun Bowl, this is an important date, was played on December 29th in 2023. So what does Angeli do? He goes 15 for 19, 232 passes, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He also has 8 rushes for 27 yards, which I didn't really think he was much of a runner, but he can move if he has to. But the reason why that date is important, in my opinion, is because on December 12th, Riley Leonard already committed to Notre Dame that he was going to transfer.
Yep.
So Angeli already knows that Notre Dame is pretty much going to pay Riley Leonard to come in and play football. So he showed out in the Sun Bowl and has a lot of good film on tape. He could have easily transferred, in my opinion, because I think other teams could have used him. But he went ahead and he stayed and tried to compete for the season in 2024. So he comes in with Riley Leonard as the backup. And in my opinion, I think what represents Angeli is you don't have to get ready if you stay ready, because Angeli was always ready to come in. And then when we look at last season, we look at kind of the slow start with Riley. We all joked, when is Riley going to throw his first touchdown pass? When is he going to, all he's doing is running, which, don't get me wrong, we were winning. But in that Purdue game, Riley's running and we're just blowing out Purdue. But what happens? Angeli comes in He throws 9 passes. 2 of those are touchdowns.
Yeah.
Okay. He throws a 28-yard dime to Cooper Flanagan, and we're like, okay, this is what we're missing. I admit, you guys probably have the text receipts when I was like, why is this guy not out there?
Yeah.
Like, we just went down in 3 plays, and he threw a dime, and we haven't done that all season. All Riley's doing is running the ball. I'm like, if he's going to run the triple option, let's throw Steve out there and have somebody throw the ball. But really, then the next game, the Ohio or the Miami of Ohio game, that's when I think the chatter started getting louder. Be like, okay, what do we? We know we got a guy on the bench. It's the myth of the guy on the bench is everything, but it ended up working out for Riley. So, not gonna, downplay that. But the biggest thing with Angeli is when he came in for the Penn State game, the Orange Bowl. I think that really solidifies. We all remember that first half when things are just not going well. We're not moving the ball. We put in Angeli with, I think, like 2 minutes left to go in the half. And he goes 6 for 7 for 44 yards, leads us down. We get that field goal, gives us a little momentum to come out in the third quarter. So from that standpoint alone, you see that he's ready. He's grown. He's loyal. He's stuck to Notre Dame. He could have easily transferred after he's shown that he has some potential to play. And now I think just by default he is one of our most experienced guys out there. So I think he's ready. It's really going to depend on the style of offense that we end up kind of playing. I think last year we definitely switched to having Riley as a dual threat, throwing in a lot of QB design runs, and I don't think we're going to have that with Angeli if he's out there. So maybe that could be a limiting factor for him if they want to stick with the same style of offense they had last year. But
but I think Angeli's more athletic than people realize. And if you go back to he was an early enrollee, his first spring game, and at the end that's when they did blue versus gold. No, that wasn't offense defense, but he finished the game with a rollout to the right, broke the pocket, and scored basically what it essentially was, quote unquote, a game-winning touchdown.
Yeah.
As a early freshman. So he is more athletic than people expect.
Yeah, I think he can get out of the pocket and run a little bit. I mean, he's 6'2", 210. He's got some size, but he's, in my opinion, more just a traditional drop back quarterback. Yeah. So, but that's what I got on Angeli. I think we know that he can come in and play. Even if he doesn't start, we know that he can thrive in a backup role too. So.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting part is the backup role, knowing that he's always ready. Is that going to be give one of the other guys a start? And, well, if we need him, he could be ready at any second. And I mean, you don't think so, but we've seen it. I mean, he's came in at moments we need him, and he's delivered, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess that puts it on to me, right? Guy that was QB3 this past year, Kenny Minchie. So, what's that?
Make the case. Why Kenny?
So I'm pretty high on Kenny Minchie. I mean, I don't really know who's going to be the starter this year, but like we said, I was happy to take Kenny on this one. So I'm going to read through some of his stuff right here. So Kenny Minchie, 6'2", 207. And while I think this was going into his senior year in high school, ran a 4.7 40. And here's a fun fact that you always see around this time, so we just had the combine, a 10-inch hand size, which put him in the 70th percentile in the NFL. You always see that one.
Yeah.
So Mike Denbrock, he's been here at Notre Dame for 1 year. Who was his quarterback before that? Oh, that's right, Jaden Daniels, 6'4", so got him by 2 inches, 210. He ran a 4.5 at ASU and has 9 3/8 inch hand size.
Comparable.
I see some pretty similar attributes there. So, I mean, I think the thing with Kenny Minchie is we can all agree he's probably the rawest talent. Like, obviously you got CJ Carr, whose grandfather was a head coach at Michigan. Like, he's been around the coaches culture the whole time. Kenny Minchie has the most, though, I think the highest ceiling. Like, he's just pure athlete. I mean, I was watching I sent you guys that video yesterday of the blue and gold game, and the dude did that not look like Riley Leonard, though? Like, he just rolls, like, draw and screen, or just QB draw to that left, running backs blocking in front of him. It's like, if Mike Denbrock just wants to run the same offense we had success with last year, Kenny Minchey seems like the plug and play kind of guy, in my opinion. I mean, he might not have the greatest arm or accuracy with his arm, but I would almost argue he's got the biggest arm strength. I mean, he's got the most QB confidence, I think, when it comes to his arm. Like, he trusts his arm maybe too much. I mean, we talked about this last year when we were sitting at the Blue and Gold game. Dude's like Brett Favre. Like, he thinks he can put that ball absolutely anywhere if he can or not. It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing.
Yeah.
But he trusts his arm more than anyone because
gunslinger.
Yeah, gunslinger with the athletic ability though, which I think is a really interesting mix. And like I said, I think he's obviously we haven't seen as much of him in the game, handing the ball off and whatnot, versus like a year ago in the blue and gold game. So I think that's gonna be the most interesting thing this year. But I also see like a little bit of he's the underdog, right? No one's expecting him. It's in Jelly Carr the lead to, and then people saying, all right, let's not leave Minchie out of it because the dude's a ball player. Yeah, exactly. I mean, what was the post the other day? Kevin Minchie.
Like, get the kid's name right.
Like, come on, he's just getting disrespected on social media. And that was what was that? I don't think it was on 3. It was one of the bigger profiles.
It was 24/7 or on 3. It was one of the.
It was one of the bigger I was like, geez, the dude just getting it right now. Like Kevin Minchie.
Get the intern off the freaking Twitter.
No kidding. I mean, could we not do a quick check on this? But I mean, he's had 2 years to learn how to read a college defense. So I mean, hopefully he seems like a smart kid. I mean, I don't know him personally, but he seems like everything you hear about him. He's a very smart kid. So he was originally committed to Pitt, and it took all of Notre Dame to get him to flip his commitment because he was so loyal to them because he's from Pittsburgh, I believe. So I mean,
he's from Tennessee.
Oh, is it Tennessee?
He's from Tennessee.
Committed
to Pitt. And actually, when we lost our quarterback that we thought we were going to get, someone in his camp reached out to Notre Dame and said, "Call Kenny. You could flip him," and that's how we flipped him.
But I mean, it was. I mean, he's a guy that wasn't the top priority. It seems like an Ian Book situation to me. Like maybe he wasn't the top choice, but he maybe gets his chance and he accelerates. So that's kind of me on Kenny Minchie. He's definitely a harder one to do because he doesn't have a giant moment where he's came in and saved us in the Orange Bowl. He doesn't he's not the greatest new freshman. They just come in. He's been around a little bit, but Mike Denbrock, I mean, he just seems like the kind of build. I mean, Jaden Daniels won a Heisman, and it seems like they're very. I'm not going to say that Kenny Minchie's a Heisman Trophy winner, but he's got some of the similar qualities as Denbrock's used in the past. So I think it's an interesting point to think about.
No, I agree because when I look, I try to think of a comp for him because I don't really know too much, and this is a double-edged sword maybe, but I immediately thought of Anthony Richardson, just big freak athlete, can throw a YOLO ball, off his back foot, like the Colt, like he did last year where he dropped a dime and like a 70-yard pass.
Yeah.
And he can run, but you also take, you got to tame him a little bit because, like you said, they're going to throw passes, and maybe we're all victims to the Josh Allen mentality now, where you get a guy that is just a freak athlete, and he's a little wild, but you can coach that out of him, and now look how good Josh Allen is, and not to say obviously this.
And I'll also say this, playing into his advantage. If this is the 4-team playoff, I'm like, you're probably not seeing Kenny Minchie, but you've got a little bit of room for grace. I mean, we saw that last year. You can go lose a game or two, he can have a bad game or two, and you can still go make the dance at the end of the year, which I think plays. I'm not going to say it plays in the coach's decision making because you're obviously going to put the best guy out there. But week 1, he does we saw so much growth in Riley.
Week 1 at Miami, off week, and then you're home versus A&M and Elko defense in year 2.
It's not easy.
Let's just be honest. This is for a first year starter. This is not ideal start to your year. I mean, you want that Toledo, Miami of Ohio,
Purdue,
So I Carter knows I'm high on Kenny Minchie and have been since we saw him in the spring game. One is I just love the kids' love for Notre Dame. So I like him for that. And then 2, the kid's got a cannon. I don't even think it's accuracy. I think it's just overconfident. He knows he can throw the ball places most guys can't, and it's not as much an accuracy problem. I mean, in that spring game, he threw some beautiful balls that were dropped. And it was just
he was rocketing them through there. So I don't know if receivers are not expecting it.
I don't want to comp him to Brett Favre, but the way he'll throw the ball,
Yeah.
and as hard as he throws the balls, I think a lot of receivers are just not surprised or not expecting the ball to get there as fast and in the window.
Yeah.
Like, he's got NFL arm talent. I mean,
and that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say he's Brett Favre. I'm just saying, like, that's a guy that reminds you of that. You're like, oh, like you didn't expect that ball to go there.
Yeah, I mean, he can break in the pocket like a Josh Allen or a
AR
Mahomes or an AR. He can do that, but he's got an arm.
Yeah,
and by far. And it's actually funny as I was doing the research, because we're switching to my guy, which is the hardest guy to do, with CJ Carr. He's got the most hype because everybody loves the freshman quarterback, and he had and he was just, if people follow recruiting, and I think that's part of what knocks Kenny, why people overlook him. Angeli wasn't a super high recruit. He was, of the three, he was actually the lowest rated of the three recruits. But Angeli's just been around the program so long, and people have seen him perform.
Yeah.
I think that's why he's on the conversation. CJ Carr committed when Tommy Rees was still the OC. And and didn't leave, despite the fact him and Tommy Rees had a great relationship. So we talk about the loyalty. He witnessed the Parker, whatever we want to call that offense year, and he didn't waver, and then stuck around. So I think CJ Carr has that loyalty, but CJ Carr had been a commitment for so long. And of course, here's the thing I'm trying to figure out with CJ Carr is CJ Carr as highly ranked as he is if he had a different last name? If he was CJ Smith, would he have been highly ranked as what he would have been? Because obviously, being the grandson of Lloyd Carr, a legend of Michigan football, his dad actually went to Michigan and played quarterback. Would he still be the highly ranked recruit he is? And actually, Kenny Minchie was slightly higher ranked than him, which I think is kind of interesting. But I think that's where CJ Carr, when you start talking about bringing CJ Carr and making the case for him, is this kid's had a quarterback coach since he's 4 years old. I mean, he's grown up with it. He's more athletic than you realize. He's not as athletic as Kenny. He is more athletic than Angeli, and Angeli's more athletic than you think.
Yeah.
CJ has seen everything. He ran a pro-style offense in high school. The kid was putting up 25 to 3,000 yards sophomore, junior, senior year, and he was playing 3/4 of a game.
Yeah.
He would set a fourth quarter of a lot of his games. I think CJ's junior year had 2,500 yards, 24 touchdowns passing, and 9 rushing touchdowns. So, CJ is an athlete. CJ is the blend of everything you've got. CJ is polished. CJ processes the game. He's been working with quarterback coaches. He's been running pro-style offense. The only thing CJ has got knocking on him right now, and maybe the only reason CJ didn't jump QB3 and QB2 last year, was he had the arm injury that happened in practice.
Yeah.
And I'll just make my case off of one NFL tight end that was at the combine from Notre Dame, and he talked about the 3 quarterbacks, and he talked about, what a winner is, Angeli is, and what an athlete he said Minchie was. But when he talked about CJ Carr, he said he's the prodigy. And I think that's all you need to know. CJ Carr was born with a football in his hand, and he's been bred, and he's been groomed, and he's been conditioned for one thing in life. He's like Audric Estime. He was put on earth, to play football. Audric Estime was put on the earth to give him the ball and let him run. CJ Carr was put on the earth to play quarterback and throw. And you don't have a lot to see unless you get nerdy. And it's probably great I had CJ Carr, because I'm probably the one guy who's watched all 3 of these guys' high school film at some point. And I discourage anybody from following recruiting, because you're going to get your heart broken. You're going to be upset. And, oh, why did they leave? It happens. If you don't have a strong will, stay out of recruiting. But CJ can throw the ball. I mean, he's polished. He can throw the ball, all the different arm angles. He can place the ball anywhere on the field. Is his arm as strong as Kenny? No. But it's stronger than Angeli's. Is his accuracy better than Angeli's? I think so. I think Angeli's strength is Angeli can process the defense. And I think we've seen this, in the blue and gold game. It was really evident to us last year. Carter and I talked about on the way back from the game. But even in like you said, Jordan, Angeli's always ready.
Yeah.
Angeli has studied the film. He knows the opposing defense. The only thing that gives Angeli fits, and this is where Angeli gets, sometimes he takes a sack you wished he would, and he doesn't get rid of the ball quick, is Angeli is good at pre-snap reads, and if he can pick up the disguise of the defense, he's phenomenal. But sometimes he doesn't pick up the disguise. I think Kenny is probably the least polished in that
last we've seen, right?
That we've seen, right? I don't think I think Kenny's high school film relied a lot more on Kenny's athleticism and a lot less on scheme. So Kenny ran a little more bland offense in high school, and they just got by the fact that Kenny could sling the ball anywhere and he could outrun everybody.
Yep.
He was a phenomenal athlete, but they didn't rely on Kenny to be like a quarterback, right? It was just raw talent. So I think Kenny's development has been slowed because Kenny's had to learn to read a defense. If the play breaks down, there's no one in that room I want more than Kenny Minchie behind the freaking line with the ball to make something happen. If my quarterback's got to scramble, I want that scrambling quarterback to be Kenny Minchie because he won't scramble, he'll make it happen.
Right.
But when you go the next step and you look at my guy CJ Carr, he can read the defense. He can run. He's not Peyton Manning back there just slinging the ball and 2 cement feet. I mean, he's more Arch Manning in that respect. He can sling the ball, but CJ can run, and he'll surprise you how well he can run. I think he's probably a little like Riley Leonard. Maybe not as aggressive a runner as Riley Leonard, but he's faster and he's more athletic than you can think. If you watch CJ Carr's high school film, what you'll see is a guy that can set in the pocket and drop a dime anywhere on the field. You'll see a guy that when there's pressure from the defense and the play breaks down, he'll scramble, he'll roll, eyes upfield, he will shift the arm angle, and he'll complete the pass. He's very accurate when he's mobile. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is, you've got a really good quarterback in Angeli. You've got a really great athlete in Minchie. But you kind of say, man, I wish that just CJ Carr is probably the perfect blend of those two guys.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that knocks CJ Carr is, again, the injury. How ready is he for the bright lights, big position? And I thought about that, and it's like, okay, if I'm the head coach, this is the conversation they have to have. And they've seen a whole lot more of these guys recent play than we have. Yeah. We've not been to practice. We've not seen these guys. We haven't had the conversations with them, but it's, okay, you're going to start at Miami, you're going to get a week off, and then you're going to play the home opener against A&M, a very good defensive A&M team.
Yeah.
And I don't think that moment's too big for a kid like CJ Carr. It's just not like a lot of guys, sophomore, it would be a big moment. I just don't think it is for CJ Carr. I think he's been in and around big time football. Expectations for him have been high since he started playing football in 7th grade. And that's the fun thing. The kid wasn't even allowed to play tackle football until 7th grade. He played some flag, I think, before that, but tackle football was not even allowed till 7th grade. And by the time he was a sophomore in high school, a few years later, he was a starting quarterback at Saline and leading them to the national championship. So the kid's been polished and been prepped for playing quarterback. He understands big moments. He's been under pressure. You can't. I mean, he was under pressure in high school. Expectations were through the roof for him because of who his grandfather was. So I just don't think the moment will be too big for him. Some kids get it. I mean, it's, end of a basketball game. Some guys want to shoot the free throws and some guys don't. CJ Carr is a guy that wants the ball. Moment's not too big. It's just playing ball. So I think that's the argument for CJ Carr. I think that's why he's got a heck of a shot of being QB1.
Yeah. Well, I guess I propose the question to you two. Let's say, pick any one of them. Let whoever's named the starter. Do we see any of the other two transfer? Because that's what I'm wondering now. All three guys, it might have a legitimate shot, in my opinion, of starting or potentially starting. And do they say, I'm not going to sit another year?
So let's just clarify this. Angeli is going into his senior year.
Redshirt junior.
He's a redshirt junior, yeah.
So he has 2 years of eligibility, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Angeli, I honestly think Angeli's the guy you should start. Like, if I were the coach and based on what I know,
and that beginning of the season schedule, right?
Yeah, just the beginning of the season schedule, how tough it is. I feel like you got to start Angeli. And if this was a Brian Kelly team, we know what we'd start Angeli and we'd have Kenny Minchie coming in and playing packages and running the ball, right? I mean, and we'd probably get CJ Carr in there. We'd get the 3 quarterback system going on. So if it's not Angeli, he's in a tough position. And quite honestly, I think Angeli should get the start, but I can see reasons why he won't. Because if they thought Angeli was the guy, why did they bring in Riley Leonard? And is it because Riley Leonard was so good, or they thought so highly of Riley Leonard they couldn't?
Yeah,
that you just could not take him, right?
Right.
I think one of my favorite things, people talk about coaching for the future, and when you're talking high school sports maybe, but when you're talking like NFL and college, if you're coaching for the future, you're coaching for the next coach because you're going to lose your job. You got to coach for win now. And if they thought Angeli was the guy, I can't believe they didn't give him the job, right? Because I don't think he's gotten any worse. I don't know how much better he's got, but like he was really good last year, and I think he could have been. I think we could have made the playoffs with Angeli as a starter last year. Would we have made the national championship? I don't know, but we would definitely have made the playoffs. And I think our quarterback play had to offset, I think, less than ideal receiver conditions, and I think that's probably what has hurt Angeli as much. So if Angeli doesn't win the job, will he stay and get his degree and only have 1 year of eligibility left, or will he do the right thing for him? And I think the right thing for him is to go out, get in the transfer portal, go someplace and try and win that starting job with 2 years and see if he can get himself to the NFL. I don't think it's out of the question that Angeli could make an NFL roster. With his arm talent and his ability to process. But he needs game experience. So I think he's the only guy, in my opinion, that transfers if he doesn't win the job. I think Kenny Minchie stays even if he doesn't win the job. And I know Angeli was an early transfer, so the interesting thing is
early
enrollee. So the interesting thing is I don't know where he's at class wise. How close is he to being a graduate? Like, is he possibly, with summer courses and everything else, is he possibly ready to graduate like at the end of the spring? Yeah. Could he technically be a grad transfer with 2 years and go somewhere? And I think if he is, and he has that Notre Dame degree in his hand in May, and he can go to Mizzou or wherever and get the starting job, he'd have to. He'd have to. And as much as I think he's got the strongest case, like if I were voting, I would make the case for Angeli just because of the first 2 games.
Yeah.
I think that's he's the only one with threat of leaving. I think Kenny Minchie just loves Notre Dame, and he's got a little more time now. But it's interesting because if it's Angeli's the starter, I think Kenny's going to stick around another year for sure. If they go over Kenny and they go to CJ Carr, then I say, okay, I think Kenny stays another year, but should he? Like, I mean, what's best for him may not be staying another year. And of course, now all of a sudden you're just like, okay, well, we got to find another backup quarterback. Hey, Tyler Buckner, you want to come be QB3, QB4? We need somebody,
right?
So even if Angeli leaves, I could see Buckner being back in the quarterback room. I mean, he was signaling in plays last year. Yeah. But yeah, Carr's not going anywhere unless he doesn't get the job next year. Just because of the injury and everything else, and I think he has maturity. I think he'll stick around. I think Kenny is probably not going anywhere, but in the event that CJ Carr is named the starter coming out of spring, then I could see Kenny making that leap. And I think that's the interesting thing. What do you guys think? I mean, do you guys see it the same way? Or?
I think I feel very similar to you about that, but also when is the starting quarterback going to be announced, right? It's going to be announced at the beginning of the first practice. Is this going to be announced before the spring game? Is this announced after the spring game? Is this announced first day of summer practice? Like, when is this announcement made, do you think? I think that's the biggest key, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. So here's how I would play it. And if I was like Denbrock and Freeman, and I would probably, because I would probably, it would be well known. I wouldn't announce it. There would be no reason to announce it to outside the team. I wouldn't want Miami to have any more time to prepare for anybody than they get, right? I don't want Elko to have any more time. I'm probably not going to announce the starting quarterback until the week before the season. Like, week 1, we're going to announce it. But I'm sure based on the reps and, who's running with the ones and what the team is going to see, I'm sure that guy is they're gonna probably have a really strong idea by the end of spring practice. Yeah. Who's QB1, who's QB2, and
I'm trying to think when they announce captains, because I mean that'll be a clear. I mean, like if you're saying they're gonna wait that long, it probably will. When they announce captains, normally the starting quarterback is a captain. If it's Angeli, I'm assuming he'll be a captain. If it's
Angeli, it'd have to be a captain for sure. I don't know that you'd have to make Kenny or CJ a captain.
Right, but that would make you think, okay, Angeli's not a cap or not the starting quarterback. He's not a captain.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah, you're looking for all the little. You're reading in between the lines on everything, man.
Yeah.
So I think the only way you announce it is if all of a sudden Kenny Minchie and Angeli announced their transferring at the end of spring. At the spring,
and you're like, all right,
DJ
Tyler Buckner. Oh wait, no, okay.
So I agree. I think not to overanalyze it, but I think if Carr is the best option and you put him out there, I think you end up losing the other two guys because you're going to say, well, you just named the guy with the longest runway left to play, like the starter. And I think last year for Notre Dame proved you need solid backups because you get injuries and you need next man up to come in and play. And we were on defense, third string guys that, probably weren't expecting to play. But the quarterback position, unfortunately, in my opinion, is just different. So they run the risk of if they pick Carr, then, Minchie's like, well, clearly you don't value me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And Angeli's like, well, like you said, Chad, I can stay, get my degree, see how close I am, and then I can go bounce and go, I laugh because, I'm here in Raleigh. NC State needs a quarterback every single year. So they would gladly take Angeli. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Angeli, he'd thrive at NC State.
Exactly.
I saw some highlights out of North Carolina the other day of guys not being able to hit a net 10 yards away. So,
yes. It's bad.
Kenny Minchie, I could see Kenny Minchie thriving in that environment. Kid out of Tennessee. It's not far from home. Yeah.
Correct. So I think you have to, I don't want to say that it's not a merit-based system to where you're like, this guy's the best guy, we're going to play him. But you also, unfortunately, have to take that into account that, if you pick that guy, you're going to lose the other two, where we've kind of all agreed. Everyone's like, okay, if you pick Angeli, we keep the same order and maybe the guys will stick around. So it's just going to be interesting to see who they name and why they end up naming him. But I hope it, selfishly in a way, that all the guys kind of get out and play so we can evaluate them a little bit more. Because we don't want to run into well, man, we got this, 5-star Hall of Famer just sitting there wasting away. It nags at us as fans where we the offense is just stalling out. And we're like, we know we got an ace up our sleeve. He's just sitting there waiting. So,
and I could see where if they decide that the guy is going to be CJ Carr next year, I could see them going to Angeli and saying, listen, give us, you're going to graduate in the fall, right? You're going to graduate at the end of football season next year. You come out and give us starting QB reps the first 2-3 games, and then we'll shut it down and we'll let you redshirt and preserve 2 years of eligibility, put some good tape together. Just give us a bridge to get to CJ Carr, after those first couple of games. And I could see Angeli, as loyal as he is, saying, you know what? I stick around one more year. I get some NIL money. I get my degree. I get to protect those 2 years of eligibility, and I get to go work toward my dream of death. Like, I could see having that agreement with Angeli. And he's the guy I think you could do that with. I don't think you could put Minchie in there and say, Minchie, there's no point in putting Minchie in as your stopgap between him and CJ Carr. As talented as he is, I just don't see him being the stopgap either. He figures out how to read the defense and take that starting role. And if he does, then CJ Carr is going to have to say, this guy's probably going to keep it for the next 2 years.
Right.
So, and that's the exciting thing is whoever's a starting quarterback this year is going to be a starting quarterback for 2 years. They're going to be the 25 and 26 starting quarterback.
We haven't had that.
Except for injury. It's been a long, Ian Book.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that's exciting to see, just to see a 2-year guy. And I mean, you look at what Daniels did at LSU under Denbrock, and he blossomed his second year in the system. And it's like, oh, what can he do with a second year with a guy's second year in his system? Like, and then you've got high ranked recruits coming in after CJ. I mean, the kid that's a freshman this year's high ranked. There's a Grubbs kid that's supposed to be the year after that. Like, there's some talent coming in. We're recruiting talent, but we talk about stats and all these guys, and CJ Carr 6'3", 210. Angeli 6'2", 207. Minchie 6'2", 205. Like, these guys are all 6'2", 200 pounds. Like they're all very similar, like size, height wise. Hand size is maybe a little different. So I don't think there's a bad choice. And of course, it depends, right? If we go lose to Miami and we lose to A&M and we start the season 0-2, then whoever that starting quarterback is going to probably,
be feeling the pressure.
Going to be feeling some pressure.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's easy. It's easy for us to go 1-1 or even 0-2. Now I think Miami's going to fall off, but I also think they got the quarterback from Georgia as a transfer,
back.
And we know that Miami is a hostile place for Notre Dame. Like people in South Florida do not like Notre Dame. So it's going to be a hostile environment. It's going to be a tough environment. It's going to be end of August. It's going to be hot as all get out. It's going to be a tough place to have your first start. So, if I'm making that argument, boy, it seems like the most safe guy to win those first 2 games, Angeli. But I don't know if they'll pick him. I don't know. And I keep saying, why haven't they picked him? They had the chance. They took Riley over him last year. And they didn't come out and just announce him at the end of the season, like going into spring, he's QB1. It's his job to lose. It makes me think that there's a little bit of undervalue of Angeli from the coaching side, which means it's either got to be Kenny or CJ.
Yeah. I know. As we were talking about old quarterbacks and favorite quarterbacks, I mean, do you guys remember? We just haven't had a hype of a freshman quarterback come in. And unfortunately, I go back to Clausen.
Yes.
Like Clausen rolls in a limo, gets champions. Out. Yes. He's got that spiked crazy hair with the glasses, rolling out of the limo, signing his intent. He gets on campus. He's a starter, freshman, sophomore. And so I think because we just don't have that, big time guy coming in and be like, this is clearly the starter. We're going to roll with him. It makes it a little bit challenging. But yeah, I agree. I think unfortunately you stick with your known commodity first, and then if you have to change, you change from there. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I think, I don't expect a couple weeks till spring practice starts. I mean, we're just a little over a month away from the Blue Gold game, which spring games are getting more and more generic and more vanilla. It's kind of a fan fest. So we won't see a whole lot there. We'll see some guys play. I mean, we'll probably see Tyler Buckner throw more passes than Angeli in that game. Who knows? But
that'll be fun, huh?
That'll be fun. So I mean, it's always if the weather's nice, it's always a good time. But it's always just a chance for some spring football. But we won't know a whole lot, and I'll be shocked if they announce who that guy is. I think it'll be after the end of the spring game to see transfers, because there's going to be some guys transfer out. I mean, I think roster-wise, they've got more guys on the roster right now than they can carry into the fall. So they're going to have to remove some scholarships, and of course the whole NIL thing. How does that play in?
And that's kind of because injuries last year. We had some guys that were planning on graduating last year and then ended up injury redshirting, so they can come back. So.
Yeah. So I mean, and when you look at this team, and that's the thing. I think running back and line is going to be the strength of this team next year. I mean, we played some young guys on line that grew, and I mean, you got to like the running back room we've got right now. I mean, Jeremiah Love is by far best running back returning in college football next year, and Price, Payne, we forget about Payne because he's been injured, and then Young, and just the young guys. Like, we're stacked in the running back room, and we're only going to get better. So you don't need a quarterback to win you games next year. You need a quarterback to not lose you games next year, and so any one of the three can be that guy. And I think if the guy that's probably most prone to make a bad decision is going to be Kenny. On that, confidence in his arm is so strong. But if you can tame that, man, Kenny gives you Riley Leonard running threat, and
absolutely
you don't need to sling the ball all over the field to beat these teams. I mean, so I can see the argument for why Kenny's that guy as well. So yeah, I think it gets really interesting. And defensively, we're just going to continue to be freaking flat out good on defense. So you can get back to the national championship next year with any one of these three quarterbacks. So now it's who are we going to pick? And if they pick Kenny, I don't care who they pick. Whoever they pick, if we return to the national championship and they come back the following year as a starter and we're even better, if they make a couple of deep runs into the playoffs, they get Notre Dame legend status. And and it's weird because I think any one of these three guys could do that.
Yeah.
And it's like one of these guys is going to get Notre Dame legend status potentially, and the other two guys are going to be like, "Oh yeah, they were Jarius Jackson. I really liked him. Never, they're gonna end up on."
Well, they got a shot at making my list. Don't worry.
5 years from now, they're going to end up on Caden's list. I really like that backup, but he never played much. I saw him once against Purdue when we were up 50, but that was it. So
yeah.
All right. Well, interesting conversation, interesting topic. Anything else to add on the QB front?
No, we just have to wait to see who they're going to be throwing it to and how those guys step up.
Yeah, we don't even want to talk about receivers yet, do we?
Yeah, let's not get into the receivers.
Yeah. So
positive vibes. Three great options at quarterback.
I listened to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about, this is the best receiver room Notre Dame has had. I'm like, man, we've been saying the best receiver room Notre Dame has ever had for I don't know how long.
And every spring game, they get so hyped up.
Yeah, and it's like, the media hype starts, and it's like, is it because we were that bad the previous year that they just look improved, or is it just someone's drinking the green Kool-Aid? I don't know. I think we're going to be better in the receiver room than we were last year. Now we'll see how.
Jaden Greyhouse can just continue how he played that in the playoffs. I think we're golden, but can we get that consistent performance all year is the biggest question.
You got to like Greyhouse, you got to like Fasan, you got to like the transfers coming in. We'll see. So. Yeah. All right. Well, that could be the next conversation. Who's WR1, right?
Yep.
Who's our go-to guy?
Yep.
Exactly.
It's got to be Buckner. He's going to merge. He's going to be. I think he's still listed as a receiver on the depth chart.
So, CB26.
He's definitely my favorite special teams guy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, Jordan, thanks for jumping on. Good conversation. So.
Yep. Anyone that's listening to this, definitely want to hear your guys' takes. Put them out there. I think this is up for a giant debate. No one really knows at this point, unless you're probably in that locker room, who's going to be the starting quarterback. All the guys have a case, I think we've realized, and it's exciting times.
Yeah, I think this is like a really good dinner, and you get to the end of dinner, and they say, do you want the cheesecake or the red velvet cake? You can't go wrong. Two solid choices. Just have dessert and enjoy it.
What I think you guys need to do is apply for some media passes and get in that locker room.
There we go. Now we're talking.
Hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
Hide a mic or hide a little tape recorder in there. Just to get some good sound bites.
We'll see if we got any sources in the locker room. How about that? We've got some guys.
We've got none, but we can make stuff up.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sources are telling me.
Yeah. Sources are saying it could be any one of the three guys.
That's right.
Exactly.
One of them will start. It won't be anyone else.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it, to seeing how the season goes and talking to you guys a little bit more. So.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Jordan.
All right. See you guys.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Irish 365 podcast.
You can find us wherever you get your podcast.
We are on YouTube, X, Instagram, and Facebook.
Just search for Irish 365 Pod.
And you can always reach us at our email, irish365pod@gmail.com.
Good night.
And God bless.